Three car bomb attacks in Daraa city and 7 civilians are martyred. Syrian army units continue operations in several areas. And in Aleppo, an army unit foils a terrorist attempt to detonate a car carrying explosives. Good afternoon, this is News in English. President Bashar al-Assad stressed that the enemies of Syria are terrorism and instability. More in the following.
Don't have civil war. It's about terrorism and support coming from abroad to support terrorists to destabilize Syria. This is our war.
Interviewed by Russia Today TV channel, President Al-Assad asserted that our enemy is terrorism and instability in Syria. President Al-Assad added that His Excellency wasn't the target right from the beginning, referring that the West always greets enemies. That is why we have to focus on the real problem, because the problem is not between the President and the people, it is not about reconciling with the people, and it is not about reconciliation among the Syrians. We do not have a civil war. It is about terrorism and the support coming from abroad to terrorists to destabilize Syria. On the presence of fractions of terrorists who are not unified and have no unified strategy, President Al-Assad said, this is not the problem. The problem is that those terrorists are fighting from within the cities, and in the cities we have civilians. When we fight these kinds of terrorists, we have to be aware that we should do the minimum damage to the infrastructure and minimum damage to the civilians, but we have to fight. We cannot leave terrorists just killing and destroying. On the time that Syria needs to defeat the enemy, President Al-Assad said, we cannot answer this question because no one claimed that he had the answer on when to end the war unless when we have the answer to when they are going to stop smuggling foreign fighters from different parts of the world, especially the Middle East and the Islamic world, and when they are going to stop sending weapons to those terrorists. If they stop, this is when I can answer you. I can tell that in weeks we can finish everything. This is not a big problem, but as long as you have continuous supply in terrorists, armaments and logistics, it is going to be a long-term war. On whether there is any chance for diplomacy or talks at this point, or if only the army can resolve the crisis, President Al-Assad said that His Excellency always believed in diplomacy and dialogue, even with those who do not understand or believe in it. We have to keep trying. I think that we will always achieve a partial success. We have to look for this partial success before we achieve the complete success. But you do not think that only dialogue can make you achieve something, because those people who committed these acts are of two kinds. One of them does not believe in dialogue, especially the extremists, and you have the outlaws who have been convicted by the court years ago before the crisis, and their natural enemy is the government, because they are going to be detained if we have a normal situation in Syria. The other part of them is the people who have been supplied by the outside, and they can only be committed to the governments which pay them the money and supply them with the armament. They do not have a choice because they do not own their own decision. And you have the third part of the people, whether militants or politicians, who can accept the dialogue. That is why we have been in this dialogue for months now, even with the militants, and many of them gave up their armaments and they went back to their normal life. Answering a question on whether he believes that the foreign invasion of Syria is imminent, President Al-Assad said, I think the price of this invasion, if it happened, is going to be more than the whole world can afford.
Minister of Information Omran Ezzor stressed that the recent meeting of the opposition groups abroad in Doha in the presence of some Arab and foreign ministers constitutes a new form of foreign intervention which aims at remarking and remarketing an old product. The Istanbul Council, in a new international regional style, In an interview with the Syrian Arab television, Azobi said that the initiatives proposed during the meeting were set up by the U.S. studies centers and attributed to certain figures to claim that the Syrian people have formulated them. In Aleppo, a unit from the Syrian Arab Army and in cooperation with the locals foiled a terrorist attempt to detonate a white Mitsubishi car carrying explosive devices that weighed about 150 kilograms. The unit detained the two terrorists who were inside the car, Omar Al-Deri and Mustafa Hammadi, in Al-Midan neighborhood. Three terrorist car bombs attacks hit Daraa city this morning near the cell phone market and the Panorama roundabout. Huge material damage was reported, in addition to a number of civilian casualties. A third car bomb loaded with anti-armored mines exploded near the finance department and a local bank, causing huge material damage. The death toll of the terrorist attacks amounted to 7. And Ezzor Syrian Arab Army units targeted an armed terrorist group which was carrying out acts of killing and sabotage in Ajbeli neighborhood, killing 7 of the group's members. An official source said that one of the killed is Ahmed Ibrahim Abdul Karim, the leader of what is called Tariq bin Ziyad battalions. The source added that another unit eliminated 5 terrorists in Al-Busayra streets. Muhammad Suwaid and Muhammad Yusuf Al-Hawali from Al-Mayadeen area were identified. A large number and a large amount of drugs were seized in one of the terrorist hideouts in the same neighborhood. In Homs city, terrorist groups targeted residential buildings in the Armenian quarter with mortar shells, which led to the martyrdom of one citizen and the injury of others, and causing a large material damage. A Syrian Arab Army unit destroyed terrorist hideouts, their cars, equipment and stolen goods. Terrorists Abbas Khalid and Basil Fa'our were identified among the killed, and the Saudi terrorist Yusuf As-Salimi, the leader of the group, along with his terrorist group, were also killed. On the other hand, the competent authorities raided a hideout of an armed terrorist group in Al-Wa'al area, killing one of the terrorists and arresting others and seizing their weapons. The competent authorities also arrested the terrorist network as they were trying to forge foreign and Syrian currencies, seizing the currencies in addition to ammunition and drugs that were in their possession. In Al-Ghab area in Hamas countryside, the competent authorities clashed near Al-Qahira bridge with an armed terrorist group that was terrifying the citizens there and carrying out acts of killing and sabotage. The competent authorities eliminated a large number of them. Saleh Dib al-Saleh was identified among the terrorists. A source in Hama Governorate said that this terrorist group is one of the most dangerous groups who plant and detonate explosive devices in Al-Ghab area. A unit from the Syrian Arab Army also clashed with an armed terrorist group near Jibreen village in Hamas countryside, killing 4 of its members. Terrorist Yusuf Adwan, one of the most dangerous terrorists, was identified among the killed. This terrorist group was coming from Idlib Governorate towards Hama Governorate to carry out terrorist acts in the city. Meanwhile, terrorists detonated an explosive device they planted near a Jawash square on the Aleppo road, which resulted in injuring 3 law enforcement members and causing material damages in the site of the explosion. Armed terrorist groups funded by Erdogan's government and the Qatari regime added a new heinous massacre to their criminal record, targeting the civilian population of Haram and members of the Syrian Arab Army.
Historical criminality and terrorism beyond the capacity of the human mind. This hateful terrorism is governing the conduct of the Wahhabi Takfiri groups which are seeking to destroy the human values and Syrian structure, supported by the terrorism sponsors, the Qatari and Saudi regimes, in participation with Erdogan's government. The frustrations that are experienced by those terrorists led them to unleash their instincts on the innocent civilians and to practice the brutality brutality in savagely killing the victims, either the civilians or the soldiers, registering new massacre in their record. In a new massacre, the people of Haram and Idlib countryside are the victims of the Wahhabi terrorist groups targeted the civilians and the Syrian Arab Army soldiers who were protecting those innocents. The terrorists shot them all by cold blood in the streets and inside the houses. This is not the first massacre by the Wahhabi terrorists from the Turkish borders right to the people of Haram, which has over hundreds of martyrs from the unarmed civilians. The massacre is a new copy from Saraqib massacre committed a few days ago, which promote some international organizations to break their silence and describe it as a war crime.
With this, we conclude our news for today. More news on our website, www.syriaonline.sy. Stay with us. Khaled Saqabani has the latest in economy after the break.